All right, you listen to King Cam with Ujumbe podcast, and Ujumbe means message. And today's message is the lands between Niger and Congo. I'm glad that you guys are here with me. I'm very happy to be here. It's Friday, and I'm just glad that we're all together one more time. And like I said, we have some. We're on every platform. All over the place. We're on Anchor, we're on YouTube, we're on Apple, and got a few more surprises towards the end. So just hold tight. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and let's get started. I don't believe in hijacking people's time, saying a lot of fillers, and let's get down to the business. Let me see here. All right. This is night school, King Cam night school session number 7. And the question is, we're on chapter 4. We're on chapter 4. People want to know where are we? We are in chapter 4. So between the land between Niger and the Congo. I know the word is spelled different or kind of in a different way. It is spelled Niger, and the G is pronounced with a J, Niger and the Congo. And so what is between them? What lies between them? See, we have did a lot of traveling, and I'm just glad that you're on this journey with me. I'm learning, and I would love for us to continue to learn together. Okay? Now, this is an introduction to African history. It's geared just for you, and it's designed to foster a life of learning. This kind of course or this segment kind of gets you started. I understand we have the Dr. Benz, Dr. John Henry Clarkson, and Francis Welsing, and so many others, Amos Wilson, you name it. But this can kind of bridge that gap from elementary level to, say, the middle school levels, intermediate level. So I really think that if we learn together, we get a little bit more foundational information every week, we'll be in good shape. All right. So this would be once a week, but of course, last week I was busy doing teacher stuff. I was a mentor teacher, and also the department chair. So we had to do a lot of things. So my apologies. Okay. So it would be once a week, and we'll go over a few readings on the continent. And a lot of people for many times over ask, okay, what about the other places, other civilizations outside of Kemet? And we're going to do just that. And we have been doing that. So just let me know how well we're doing, and we're gonna keep it moving. Yeah. All right. So we're trying to cover the sub-regions of Africa. Keep in mind, I don't agree with everything, but this map, it describes the northern region of Africa, the West African region, the central, south, and then the southern and eastern. Keep in mind that before these state or country lines was drawn out by the Berlin Conference, a lot of these regions was flowing together, especially along the Nile River valleys and so on. So, and the Niger River and so many others, but these boundary lines and country lines didn't really exist. Okay, so we're still in the book, The Lost Cities of Africa by Basil Davidson. Very good book, very thorough. But of course, just like anything, there are times I do disagree with the man, but however, it's a pretty comprehensive book. It's a pretty comprehensive work, and he highlights multiple regions of Africa. He did spend a lot of time in West Africa, of course, very famous, but there were other places. So we're going to get right into it. Okay, don't forget to recap. Were there any cities or empires outside of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai? If you missed that episode, I'm going to put that in the description box, so you're going to see it somewhere on YouTube. So if you missed it, check it out. All right. There are other empires outside of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. Believe it or not, see, when we talk about West Africa, we normally would lean towards those famous empires like Mansa Musa and kings like Mansa Musa and the university at Timbuktu. But there were so many others. Did they use different script to communicate? They did use a different kind of script, and they used it while employing another language. So they use their language inside of a language. All right. And lastly, did you know about the small crown jewel? Okay. So check that out. Okay. Let's get into the discussion. We will identify and discuss the major concepts in the book entitled The Lost Cities of Africa in chapter 4. We are in chapter 4. I'm very happy about this. I love what we're doing, and I love this book. And so I'm excited. Okay, here are the main questions, okay, or essential questions. First question is, what cities were between Niger and Congo? Okay, that's the first question. And we're going to try to answer that. What cities were between Niger and Congo? Next question, what is the Great Distortion? According to Basil Davidson, there was a Great Distortion. What was it? What was it? How many Africans were taken? According to the book, how many Africans were taken? Okay. Lastly, why was Benin art so highly regarded? Okay. You know, and so there's so many things that we're gonna address, but let's get down to it. Chapter 4, between the cities between Niger and the Congo. What is between them? Let's get to it. Now, there's a place called Beyond the Savannah in the section Beyond the Savannah, and this called the grasslands. The grasslands proved to be just as much, according to Davidson, just as much as a barrier to foreign people as the desert. I wouldn't, you know, I didn't think of it like that. You know, when you're used to one kind of terrain and then you encounter this one, it may be different, you know. So the grassland proved to be just as much as a barrier to foreign people outside of this area as the desert did. And now, just like many other cities and places in Africa, they traded with each other. They did. That was their means of commerce. I know it's kind of hard to visualize that, especially in a world full of currency and fiat currency, but bartering was the thing. But they bartered things of value. Yes, I do. Speaking of that, I am an economics teacher also, and I do teach a little bit about supply and demand. And so it's important to get that understanding that there are things that are valuable to us that we would trade. And so it's pretty cool that they traded with each other. They traded whatever they could. Unfortunately, there were some things that there was some resources they traded that they should not have, but let's get into it. They traded gold for sure, cola nuts, and slaves. Yeah. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Let's go and get into it. Okay. This commerce called, you know, the slave trade, this thing called the slave trade, which is evil in and of itself. Let's address it. Yes, Africans were doing that to each other. It was happening. Even now, we still have sellouts. Let's be honest with you, right? But it was in a sense to where, okay, this person and their children would eventually be grafted in, to my understanding. You know, correct me if I'm wrong. You can comment and everything, put something in the comments. But over time, it was not like Western slavery where it was supposed to be perpetual and forever. Names were taken, language was taken, and so on. When, say, the Hausa took in another group of people because of war or whatever, their children and the children's children will soon become Hausa. You're looking at somebody was a product of that. Okay, so not even, and here's the funny part: dealing with the grassland, dealing with this area. This area. We talk about Chad. We talk about Cameroon. We talking about the the Congo, and Angola. This was a place that King Mansa Musa or even Askia, they didn't come to this place. It was a barrier. Yes, they traded along the Bilal Sudan, but going south, they was like, I don't know about that. But people were still living there, though. It wasn't desolate. It wasn't uninhabited. We've already proved the point that the Batwa people was living in the Bakongo, in Uganda, and many others. But famous kings like Mansa Musa and many others didn't go in this direction. But people still live there, right? Beyond the savannah. Now the Akan people migrated southward beyond the savannah. They did. Remember, let me show you. Let me get back to it. Ghana, Nigeria is, I know the picture that I have on YouTube may just describe the central and western part, but this land, okay, beyond Niger, okay, south of Niger, that's Nigeria, that's Benin, Togo, Ghana, shout out to the Ivory Coast, that whole southern, that southwestern, that central part along Cameroon, along that coast, that is what we're talking about. So those people did migrate. They did move back and forth. The Akan people migrated southward beyond the savannah. Why were they able to migrate southward or even have knowledge of it? See, remember we said Mansa Musa didn't do it, but other people did. Yeah. So how did they do it? They have knowledge of it, or, what do you think, guys? What do you think? Basically, when I found they had a similar culture. That's how they was able to do it. Now, some families and some ethnic groups up north may not have they may not have meshed well with each other. There was Africans for sure, but culturally too different. However, in between that, the lands beyond the savannah, between Niger and Bakongo, they had a similar culture. Okay? So once again, these places beyond the savannah, this is Nigeria, Cameroon, Angola, Chad, Ghana, all these places, similar culture. And they had a similar ancestry. We talked about migration patterns. We talked about coming from the east westward and so on. They had a similar ancestry. Okay, according to Davidson, the Akan people had an ancient capital called Bonu Mansu, whose founding fathers came from the Great White Desert in the north. So they had similar culture, similar ancestry. They said, look, our ancestors came from the Great White Desert. It sounds like it's an L reason, if I'm thinking about it, right? So think about that. Yes, we have our books, but in our oral traditions, a lot of our elders mention where they came from. Okay, because before there was letters, before there was something written, we told a story. We said, once upon a time, this happened, or that happened. Or this king took out a snake, and then here come the Hausa, or they came from the east, or places like that. So we have to listen to our elders when they tell these stories. Yeah? All right. So beyond the savannah. But here's the thing, whenever Europe described West Africa, it was only from a European perspective. Yeah, duh, right? But that they was lacking depth and even the necessary information to paint a complete picture, because they only knew certain things. They didn't go into detail. Why? Because one reason is because they didn't reach the interior. They were just along the coast. They were just, just barely getting through. They only focused on the West Coast and that, the coastal regions and, Senegambia and many other places. They didn't go, like we would say, off in there, right? They didn't go that way. No. Think about it. If some Africans didn't go further into the interior, certainly foreigners weren't, right? But this is before, keep in mind, this is before imperialism. This is before colonialism. This is before all this was happening. Okay. So all they could describe is maybe Timbuktu. Okay. Maybe Mauritania and Morocco and some places like that. But that was it. All right. So but their goal, of course, it wasn't for, human interaction. It wasn't for peace or of any kind. Their goal was capital gain, okay, to get gold resources and, of course, Africans. Because by now, we're in the 13th and 14th century, the 1400s, and what's happening is that there is an awakening in Europe, and because of their scarcity where they are, they try to figure out a way out of this issue, and they feel that slave and African slave labor would be the answer. So they began their onslaught, all right? But remember, up until this point, there was not a thing like this. This was totally different, okay? So the land beyond the savannah, wherever Europe described West Africa, it was only basic. Yes, we had Leo Africanus. Yes, we had many others, but we're talking about the interior. We're talking about the western central part of Africa. Okay? Now, Basil Davidson talked about the Great Distortion. What happened? I kind of alluded to it already. I kind of jumped ahead of myself, but I'm excited about this. What is the Great Distortion? What happened? What impacted Africa? It was like a bomb hitting it, right? And what was the phenomenon worse than the Black Death of Europe? You see, I would tell my students, yes, there was a Black Plague in Europe, but there was other things happening around the world. Okay, so what was the phenomenon worse than the Black Death of Europe, and what was the Great Distortion according to Basil Davidson? Check it out. The slave trade. That was very devastating. And I'm going to be even-handed with it. It wasn't just Europe. It was not just the European slave trade. There was an Arab slave trade that was getting us also. So for the people who do not understand as to why Africa could not do certain things during a certain period of time was because Africa was being stripped both sides of the coast. Both sides. They was fighting every front, and it was being taken on every front. Think about that. Think about if you're trying to defend your home and people come through your front door and your back door. Right? Think about it like that. The slave trade. That was the devastating moment of African history. It cast like Dr. John Henry Clark, I think he said it casted a shadow in our history. Okay. Now, the Great Distortion. How many Africans were taken according to Basil Davidson? According to Basil Davidson, millions were taken away or perished overseas. Millions. And for people to kind of doubt about situations about slave ships, did they ever exist? There are primary sources of people that drew the Africans on the slave ship. Come on now, let's think together. Okay, millions were taken away or perished overseas. All right. So now in one segment, I think this is in the page 130s. I think. Let me find my. I'm going through the information. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is for those who follow the book. This starts on page 130. The Great Distortion. Portugal. He calls the roll. Portugal took 1,389,000 between the years 1486 and 1641. 1,389,000. Yeah, that's a lot of people. Okay, and even that, he goes even further, over 52,000 from Angola alone. Just that one area, just that one country, 52,000 people taken out of Angola. That's a lot of, like, the city where that I teach. That's the whole city right there. 52,000 people. That's a lot. And then they were taken. We talking about taken away or perished. A lot of them died on the way there. Yeah. A lot of them died on the way there. And we have to understand this was the reality of our ancestors, of my ancestors. This was their reality. Their brothers were taken, sisters, mothers were taken, children were taken. Not to be seen ever again. Great distortion. But now, how was it able to do that? Of course, divide and conquer. Wars provoked slavery. Some fought hoping that the Europeans would not enslave them. I mean, I got to do this, or they're going to take me in mine. But that wasn't always the case, because eventually the machine of slavery turned on them. But there were a series of slave revolts, African revolts across Africa. Our ancestors did not take this line down. Okay, they had swords. A lot of these pretty swords that are designed now it wasn't just for show. Okay, you can get that work. All right, so some of our ancestors did fight back. They did fight back. They did not accept the slave status without a fight. They weren't. The narrative is, especially when I was growing up, the narrative is that, especially when you watch the video, they just gradually, just with their heads down, just making their way to the ship. No, they was fighting. They was fighting on their way to the ship. They was fighting on the ship, because they didn't understand why they was being taken and what was going on to them, what was happening to them. And so the chiefs were doing it. And so they had their warriors fighting. Okay. And so let me read this. Let me read this. This is of course, I alluded to this. Contrary to popular belief, Africans were defending themselves from being captured. And of course, we may get into the Americas when Africans were throwing hands in America also. It wasn't just people singing "We Shall Overcome," people were swinging too. Okay, let that sink in. We are human beings also. I remember a picture of a man in the civil rights movement. He has a sign saying, "I am a man." So we may get into that. All right, let me know. All right, but now here's the thing that really caught my attention during this process. And I guess you hear it many times over and over again, but when you read it and really realize what was happening, it was happening. So as this process was happening, okay, I'm going to read this to you. I think on page 133. It was talking about the Great Distortion and once they got onto the ship. This is the thing that really kind of shook me a little bit. It says it might be different from the state of mind of those European bishops of the Congo who sat decade after decade, Basil Davidson says, decade after decade, in an ivory chair on the quarry side of Luanda, and extended their merciful hand in the wholesome baptism of the slaves. Decade after decade, in an ivory chair on the quarry side of Luanda, and extended their merciful hand in the wholesome baptism of slaves who were rolled beneath going in chains to the ships that would carry them to the Middle Passage to Brazil. They was baptizing slaves who was in the bottom of the ship. That shook me. What kind of human being are you to call yourself baptizing them, christening them while they're in chains? Maybe it was to appease their conscience because they know they were straight up living foul. You know, I need to do right by them. No, you need to let them go. So yeah, baptizing them while they're in chains in the bottom of a ship on their way to Brazil, on their way to many other places. And the thing is, they believed that the Africans were inferior to them and had no soul. But when a lot of their authors, a lot of their people got there and had interaction with our ancestors beyond the savannah, between Niger and Congo, they were more Christian than they were. They treated them with love and kindness better than their European counterparts. So I've always said, we have always been civilized. We have always been a civilized people. However, the issue is we have allowed them to impose their views or impose their way of life on us. So we're starting to act more like them now, instead of being civilized, instead of being just and upright as we can be. All right? But let me move on. Okay, now, we're on Benin now. Benin. And this is a great discovery for me. Once again, this is one of the lands beyond, between Niger and Congo, right? Benin. It's a small place, but it's a powerful place. People do not understand the weight that Benin really has. Let's get into it. All right, Benin, in an expedition, okay, of course, this is after the Berlin Conference, they found several hundred bronze statues suggestions of an almost Egyptian design. We're not saying they looked exactly the same when you line them up, but they suggested, wait a minute, this is very intricate, very detailed, reminds us of the New Kingdom work and so on. According to page 139, they said magnificently carved masks. They was carved very well. Attention to detail, right? They were designed so well that the people who found it believed that the people of Atlantis made it on the lost continent. What the heck? Even back then, they was attributing the work of African people to people from outer space or from somewhere else. Certainly these Africans could not have made this or built this or done this. The people of Atlantis did this. No, the Africans in Africa did this. And we can still do great things. We should do it so well to where, man, ain't no way. But the good part is we have recordings. We can record it. We can show them what we can do. But we just got to believe in ourselves, right? So they found works of brass, right? And then they found another set of bronzes found in Oni of Ife outside of Benin. So it wasn't just one place. It was several places that had bronze work. You know, just like the pyramids. The pyramid, it just didn't happen in Giza. It was a series of a body of work along the Nile Valley. It wasn't just in Egypt, way up north in the Delta. It was in Sudan and further south, right? Now, remember our discussion, our westward discussion. Remember about a couple of sessions ago, we talked about that movement, okay? Now, the culture was the African culture, no matter where they were, was going to be African, okay? And so there were some similarities or unity in diversity, like Basil Davidson like to say. Their modes and means of worship and self-expression, they may have named them differently, but you will see some unity there. And so you will see some evidence of their life and what they saw and what they believed. And so you will see them, how they would make the king and his queen the focal point, just like in Egypt, just like in Kush. You see that in other African nations, okay? So they believe that the spirits are immortal. They believe that there was a power that fueled the sun. No, they did not worship the sun. No, they didn't worship a cow. They realized that God was in everything and was everywhere, so they reverenced nature. They reverenced that energy behind it. So, but you see, and according to the book, they would say the Egyptians, basically, according to Davidson, the Egyptians spearheaded everything. No, the Egyptians learned from the Nubians, but also that culture transferred and moved westward, because Kemetic and Kush culture, I said many times, is an African culture, and Africans poured into the Nile Valley, and the Nile Valley poured back out. Okay. And so let's get into it. The Nile Valley influence moved westward as the country fell. A lot of to the hands of the foreigners, they moved out west. The Sao people, and even further west, the Yoruba people would have their divine kings and priests of the ram of the sun. And Shango had a ram's mask. But now, get this. We discussed this before, but here's something else. Let's move back east. Did the Yoruba people know about ancient Meroe? We had these discussions about the influence. You can check it out. But let's lean further into this. We're going back to the east. Did the Yoruba people know about ancient Meroe? I think so. Because remember, Lake Chad and Niger and those places was the bridge between the East and West, right? Because there was artifacts indicated that they did, and bronze casting was made by the lost wax method of Meroe. So the way they made their artifacts, the way they made their casts and their vessels was very similar to Kush. I didn't say that. Basil Davidson did. And the people that went and did the groundwork and did the spade and the digging did that for us. And these people were not Black people, ladies and gentlemen. These people were Europeans that was making the connections. I'm just saying, they put two and two together. So there were some you could see those tracks going from west back to the east. They were all connected. And it wasn't a brief moment. This form was established after the fall of Meroe. And so you see these artifacts strewn all over the lands between Niger and Congo. They may name it differently. They may do things differently. However, the style of work was the same. The mode of respecting elders was the same. The way things was very matrilineal was the same across multiple places. Okay, so matrilineal. What I mean by that, matrilineal means the king's rulership was legitimized, or was legit through the mother and not his father. Matrilineal. Okay, So let's recap. What cities or what places were between Niger and Congo? Name one, but there was quite a few, right? And what is the Great Distortion according to Basil Davidson? What is the Great Distortion? And how many Africans were taken? Of course, we know that's just a hard estimate, but we're just talking about we're talking about what did Davidson say. We know that it may be more, right? And why is Benin art so highly regarded? Okay. Now, so what's next? We will discuss chapter 5. We will discuss chapter 5. And for more on Central Africa, check out Home Team. He's real good. Sankofa, Pan-African Series, and AE Learning. They're awesome. And before we go, prayers, we're going to pray for peace, unity, and stability for our family along the Sahel region and the Congo. We cannot we can't lose sight of our own African people that are suffering right now. So if you can, and I think you should, if you can pray, you should pray. Yeah. All right. So just listen to King Cam Ujumbe podcast. Ujumbe means message, and the message is what's the cities between Niger and Congo. Okay. But I told you, thank you for staying with me. I got a special surprise for you. Couple of things. This show has been brought to you by many great people. It's been brought to you by Peachy Cam Events and Designs. And let me get to my screen here. The Ellis County African American Hall of Fame Museum and Library. I am yours truly. I am the new president of the board of directors president. So much love to them. Also, Pan-African Connection Bookstore in Dallas. Okay, shout out to the Pan-African Bookstore. And Irie Smokehouse. Irie Smokehouse. Check them out. If you are in the DFW area, check them out. Good food. They're awesome. Shout out to the fam. Now, I have a surprise, okay? I've been working on this. I have a series of journals out now. I have a series of journals on Amazon. If on Amazon.com, I have a series of journals. I have the sermon journal, and then I have the Midnight Sun Dream and Art journal. I have the hard cover right now, but I'm working on a soft cover for young people, for children. Dream and Art journal for children. It's not just you writing what you saw or dreamed about, but draw it. Okay, and of course, Ujumbe means message journal. Yeah, Ujumbe means message. So, yes, I have journals out on Amazon right now, available, ready to roll. So hopefully, we'll get some more going. We get some more things going. But I really appreciate you hanging with me. Once again, you listen to King Cam Ujumbe podcast. Ujumbe means message. And today's message is the lands between or lands beyond Niger and Congo. I'll talk to you later.